俺を信じろ。お前を信じる俺を信じろ。
何それ?
What's up, everyone? Welcome to 3 out of 10 anime fans. Recommend you check out this podcast if you ever get reincarnated into another world, aka 3 out of 10 anime. This show is all about having fun conversations to rank anime based on a standard set of criteria so they can be compared, contrasted, organized, and recommended. We discuss a different show or movie each week, so whether you're a seasoned weeb or new to the genre, we know you'll have a fun time. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. Here's the agenda for each episode. We start out by giving our first impression of the show by defining it in one sentence. Then we go into our personal enjoyment, which is a 1 to 10 ranking based on a personal rubric of how much we each enjoyed the show. Then we have a technical assessment where we all try to come together and define the show on a scale of 1 to 10 based on 4 categories on its technical accomplishment. Then we give our recommendations and comparisons to other shows and announce what we're doing at the end. I'm Brett.
I'm Skylar.
And crew, don't call me Kamina. Call me Bro.
And we have Bro. We are your hosts from the United States. We each have varying opinions and tastes and backgrounds, which should result in some interesting conversation and relatable dialogue, no matter who you are. We're grateful you're joining us for our special discussion about this week's show, where we pierce the heavens with our drills. Gurren Lagann, a mecha adventure on Netflix/Funimation, which is now Crunchyroll. 27 episodes, and we're discussing all 27. So spoiler warning, if you don't want spoilers, go watch the show and come back. There is also some debatably mature content in the show, just as a heads up. So without further ado, how would you guys define this show, describe your impression of this show in one sentence? And for those who are, before we do that, for those who are listening, you probably should check out this episode on our YouTube channel, because you'll get to see my incredible drill, but more importantly, our own Bro's incredible cosplay for this week's episode.
It took like a whole 10 minutes to put this together, bro! Pierce the heavens!
I think we should start with our Bro. What's your one sentence?
So, as I found this anime, they put all... Oh, God, my microphone! They put all the weight of carrying this anime on the chest of one character. And Yoko had a lot to begin with. We all know that. I caught Braydn as he was drinking something. KO!
That was... Wow. That was good. I think maybe you should hit us with that again. Where your microphone isn't peaking from the yelling.
Yeah, let me get the stats back again. So, as I watched the anime, they put all the weight of carrying this anime on the chest of one character, and Yoko had a lot there to begin with. We all know that.
All right. Okay, I'll follow up with my one sentence. An over the top, in every imaginable way, mecha anime, following the plot of what you'd expect from a 2000s show, full of tropes and fan service and craziness. There's my one sentence.
Yeah.
Sky.
Oh boy. Yeah. A standard mecha that still goes above and beyond in every expectation in terms of what you would think to be normal, in terms of fan service, proportions, and pretty much everything else.
But in a bad way. Because we're going to do this in a second, but you rated this pretty low.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that.
Yeah.
And let's get into it right now. Let's go into our personal enjoyment. What did you guys give Gurren Lagann on a scale of 1 to 10 for your personal enjoyment? I'll go first. I gave Gurren Lagann a 6. And for me, A 6 is a show that is good and it has enough to keep me entertained and keep me going, but there's enough negative things that really started to cause disinterest for me. I gave this show a 6.5 when I watched it in 1.5 speed. So it gets a little bump when I watched it faster.
We skipped a little bit, you're saying.
Yeah. So it was a 6. It was a 6.
Mm-hmm.
I might edge lower 5.5 to 6.5, kind of a range, but I'm landing on 6. Sky.
So I gave this one a 4.5. And so for me, it is a show that I generally disliked, but it had something going for it or I wouldn't have finished. Changing a few points would have increased the score for me sometimes significantly. And then, yeah, kind of like you mentioned, I also watched it on 1.5 speed because there wasn't an option to go faster. So...
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, bro.
Bro! You ready for this ranking? I gave this score a 5 out of 10. Because while the ending of the show might have pierced my screen with graphics, it did not quite pierce my heart.
I love it.
Yep.
I'm just loving this. I have a whole list of quotes up on my second screen, and with the intent of using as many of these in this episode as I possibly can. That wasn't one of them, but you know, pierce the heavens. That's the whole thing. That's the whole thing of the anime.
So
yeah.
we're gonna do we're gonna do something a little different this time because I just found something on the internet that was incredibly interesting.
Okay, he was talking about this before. You still hasn't told us what this is. So what are you talking about there, Brett?
I'm talking about the fact that critics of this show on Rotten Tomatoes scored Gurren Lagann as a 100%.
What? Wow.
Are you serious? Yeah. Yeah. How was a good question?
They didn't. Okay, bro. They didn't talk to us, Brett. They didn't talk to us, the critics who actually are reviewing things intentionally, because the first 7 entire episodes of this anime are pointless. You have episode 1, watch that. You have a recap episode 7 or 8 down the line. You can basically just watch those 2 episodes and then continue. How can you give something a 100% ranking when you can skip 5 episodes of this anime and be fine?
So I think 7 or 8 is the recap episode.
Yeah. And it's one of 2 recap episodes. I think they do one at the midpoint as well.
Yeah, there's one at 12.
But literally, there's nothing
2?
Substantial besides, again, Yoko in the first 7 episodes of that anime. You get some comment lines, sure. But you get a lot of the rest of what he says after the recap point.
Well, all of Kamina is in the first 7.
I mean, he's most of the. I mean, he's not most of the first season. He's in I think
He's
there's a
like
couple
half
more episodes after 7. There's 2 or 3 more episodes before the fight happens against the Beast King, where Kamina, spoilers, dies like a bro. You know, it was a bro moment. Absolutely, bro. Bro, it just was spectacular, bro. And that's when stuff actually started happening.
Yeah.
You see him kiss Yoko, and then Simon's oh my gosh, what about my crush on Yoko? And then you see him giving his jumping in for his friends, and he says, "No, Simone, you can go push further. You must. Your drill must pierce the heavens." And that's a lot of what you need out of him, honestly, because he dies, and then the rest of the show happens.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I
Yes, Brett.
I don't normally agree with critics a lot of the time. With this show in particular,
I'm offended.
the one moment that tells me that they are so wrong, the one single moment, is when, near the end of the show, the convenience factor of the little Buta just
the little space
Just-
potato pig thing.
conveniencing his way to
Jeez
progressing the plot,
Louise.
and then all of the sudden just like turning into a human. That whole thing with Buta, just like whatever.
Brett,
It's so clear to me. It's so clear to me that like critics of shows are trying to make statements and prove something more than they are trying to give an honest review of a show. Because no matter how you look at that whole sequence, it was nonsensical, convenient, completely off key. Like the only theme it goes along with is over the top.
Yeah.
but
Sure,
Brett,
but
and I'm going to talk from the critics here, but they have made him like a human, relatable character this whole time. He's been there on screen every episode. Why wouldn't he have a big impact at the end of the show, Brett? The answer I have to my own question is because he did nothing the rest of the show besides like give like a thumbs up to Simone. He like tousled Kazuma's hair or something, and he definitely enabled a lot of fan service with Yoko.
oh
He
yeah,
definitely got some nice cuddle times in there.
I don't
Stick a
think
little
anything
duster.
is required to allow Yoko to give fan service.
Yeah, no, seriously. Like
Yeah.
that. I mean,
Yoko's character design is fan service. That's her design.
and there were some notes that they wanted to have like, there were some notes that we wanted to, that like she like ends up being a school teacher and like wants to protect kids and like never really ends up getting with anybody, and that was like a understandable thing in the show. As I feel like for the lead female role in this action anime.
But they
That
did it in a way
said,
that was weird.
She was just a whole like mishmash of tropes, and it was just thrown around the screen to grab attention. Because like I say this time and again, the first 7 episodes, that's basically it. There's some cool stuff in the first episode where you're setting up characters, and then Yoko is basically just the plot while you're being introduced to these non-dynamic characters, these very static characters of, what was it, the Black Cats and their brother. There was the
Yep.
there was the tech guy. What's his name? I gotta look it up. I have the list up right here. Leon. Leon comes in. He starts implementing technical stuff, but like none of it has any impact because it just matters that they smash it with their big old mecha boy. Viral is introduced, but he's just like another speed bump they jump over as they're doing their whole story thing. That's just the ones I can remember until like the big change happens, or until the story does its recap and actually starts moving moving it a little bit.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so let's. This was a little bit out of order, but I had to bring that up early because, like, it really shocked me. But we've already talked about a few things. Let's
Yeah.
keep going. What made this the score it did for you guys? What things did you like and not like?
Yeah. Goodness. Well, let me talk about what made it the score it is, because watching the show that I have seen my rubric or have listened to us know that when I rate something a 5, it's something that I actually do recommend to people. Like if this is something that I would put forward and say you should watch it. And I did watch it, watching all 27 episodes. So if you can push through those without me saying, hey, skip those, whatever, you're going to find an anime that in the end I would say is worthwhile to watch. I really like the ambiguous, weird naming of spiral energy, which is like the fundamental power of the world and of evolution. So because you can apply that to different things. Like they say it's like motivation, it's like determination, it's like unyielding human spirit. But then it can be applied to just anything they want it to, and that flexibility is kind of cool because they not only said it's spiral power. The biggest power is a drill. The galaxies are in spirals. Like they keep returning to justifying this drill thing, and I liked it honestly.
I thought it was interesting as well.
Yeah. And then beyond that, the last 5 episodes really brought out a lot of creativity that was not shown throughout a lot. I mean, there's some interesting story beats and whatnot. Like I said, the spiral power and some character lines. But the last 5 episodes had a lot of weird stuff that they just like, because they as they do, they were shooting beyond what I could possibly imagine. And they did. They reached beyond anything. I thought the moon was literally going to be their limit with the mid-break. But when they're literally throwing galaxies at each other, or they're creating anti-spiral gravity wells that is a lake in space of gravity or spiral power, like, and then the monsters like stone monolith hands, or like weird Dark Souls-esque, like cobbled together marbles, monoliths. That's crazy. They actually did go beyond. They did. And that was enough for me. That's why it's a 5. I honestly will toss a show out to people to watch. I had fun with it. And the end.
Sweet.
By the end.
Okay, you just reminded me of something I need to clarify for our listeners and viewers. Okay, so Skylar and Braydn both have components of their enjoyment list, which is, would I recommend this to someone to watch? I do not have that in my list at all. And it's because for me, and the reason I'm bringing this up is good. And Braydn told me something last week after our last episode, which was actually our bonus Jujutsu Kaisen episode. We have some pre-recorded, but I recommended.
We're like
I recommended
5 episodes ahead now. You know, whatever.
Yeah. I recommended Neon Genesis Evangelion, which, for the record, I think is I hated it. And it's tragic. It's almost scarring if you're not ready for it. It has tons of mature content, which isn't inherently a bad thing. But Braydn was like, "Bray, you got to stop recommending that show." So here's the clarification I want to give. I don't recommend shows to people based on what I like, because I have my own preferences and I enjoy certain things, but I know other people enjoy other things. Like for me, I'm not big on the gore, the gruesome, like the skin ripping thing. But if someone else is into that kind of thing, I can recommend shows to them that I don't like, but I think they would like. So I just want to give that disclaimer that, like, when I recommend shows that I hate, it's not because I think it represents my values or our values as a podcast. I recommend it because I think you might like it if you have that kind of taste. So anyway, that's the disclaimer I wanted to give.
Yeah,
that's kind of some of the explanation.
Talk about Gurren Lagann. What was the Gurren Lagann score for you, Brett?
Okay, so for me, it was a 6, and the reason it was a 6 is the things I liked. Kamina, and Kamina. He was awesome. He just embodied that just like single-eyed commitment to a passion, and it was inspiring. It really was. He was inspiring and fun and mature, even though he was so carefree a lot of the time. Like, he was just such a good character. I mean, and the fact that they committed to killing him when they did,
right? I
was surprised and very satisfied with how they did it and how it really drove the story forward. I think it was so well done. Everything that had to do with Kamina, I think, was done so well.
You know, it's interesting because that unyielding determination, optimism, or overcoming anything is a very common, I want to say shonen trope. It might just be like a male anime character trope. Like, if you're really going to do, if this guy is really the chosen person, he will be unstoppable. That's like the defining trait of these characters. So I'm thinking like Hunter x Hunter. I'm thinking like
Naruto.
Yeah. Where like sometimes these characters land for me, including Kamina. Kamina, he hits it. I mean, he's kind of one-liney for me personally, but he like I like the character, obviously. If you could see me, I'm all tatted up. I got body paint on.
With some of the things I didn't like, though, and like there's other things I did like, right? Some of the fight scenes were awesome, especially Kamina's final fight scene. Some of the music was good. I did like a lot of the story beats they hit, and like it was interesting how it progressed. But some of the things I didn't like, I mean, I don't hate fan service,
Yeah.
But it gets to a point where it's egregious and distracting and pointless.
Yep.
And I felt that, especially where Yoko could have been a great character, where she was only there for fan service, was a huge disappointment, and it was completely superfluous. The show didn't need that to make it what it was. So that was kind of lame for me, for enjoyment wise. And then pacing, like the show did just feel really slow. The time jump at like episode 12 or 13 or whatever, I really liked, because I felt like it was really dragging, and I was like, how are they going to get this to like, because I knew what was coming. It's a mid-2000s mecha. I knew that by the end, they were gonna be throwing galaxies at each other or something crazy. Like, they always accelerate up to this wild point. So I knew it was coming, and I was like, how are they gonna get there at this pace? And then they finally had that cutover, and I was like, wow, okay, this is cool. So I liked that. But the show did feel to kind of drag on a little bit. And you know, a lot of the fight scenes are just, you know, like 90% dialogue, 10% action, which happens. But then they have some good fight scenes and some good action that's 80% action and 20% dialogue. So anyway, those are just some of the things I wasn't a huge fan of.
You need to kick logic and do the impossible. That's how Gurren rolls.
I cannot. I cannot. And I don't think Skylar can either. Skylar, what are your thoughts?
So, yeah, this one fell pretty flat for me because, kind of like you mentioned, the first, 5 minutes of the first episode is essentially the ending of the series, where they're throwing galaxies at each other.
Oh, yeah, that.
And so because of that, the entire show, I'm sitting there going, okay, I know where we're going to be, just how are we getting there, essentially?
Mm-hmm.
So by the time they were throwing galaxies, it's like, oh, here's how we got here. But I don't know.
Hate when shows do that.
Yeah, so it did spoil that, but
it's kind of the same thing as like our intro spoiler thing. It's like the exact same thing, but it just like you had to watch it as the first 2 minutes of this show.
But it was legitimately the first few minutes of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I already knew what the end game essentially was, and everything that was happening, I was just like, okay, how does it get us to throwing galaxies at each other?
And I see how you could logically say, oh, yeah, we did that intentionally because we want people to be like, whoa, how'd they get there? I want to watch. But for me, it has the opposite effect where it's like, great, now I know where we're going.
And now, for me, it's a little bit different. 'Cause I honestly did not expect Simone to be that character that we saw in the start of the show. Because I didn't.
Me neither.
That is true. That is true.
I thought it was Kamina.
I thought
However,
it was Kamina's dad, honestly.
However, during
that too.
Orphan as a kid or something and left on the planet. So,
but during the one episode where Kamina dies, I knew that one of the two was going to die. I just didn't know which one.
Interesting.
But when it was Kamina, I was a little bit more surprised because I was expecting it to be Simone.
Yeah. I got a note here,
I wasn't expecting it to be Simone because the whole point of the show to me was Simone's growth. And that's where, like, even from episode 1, it was all about him getting mentored by Kamina and wanting to grow as a person. He was obviously passive and shy and weak and all these other things. And so I knew he wasn't going to die. But I actually didn't expect them to committing to kill Kamina.
No.
I actually was kind of surprised. I thought for sure, like, I had that moment where I was sitting there and I was like, oh, dang, that's crazy. Well, I wonder how they're going to bring him back next episode. And then they didn't. And then I was like, wait.
And then they didn't.
Okay.
You know, I want to note here that like they actually treat death very well in this anime.
Yeah,
like, not so much the Beastmen, but like
here's the thing, though. That's just kind of a mecha thing.
Okay, but like storytelling, I see a lot of time where death just like happens, and sometimes I'm just like, I don't care. In fact, at the end of this, they kill off a lot of supporting characters at the end of the second season or the second half of the show, whatever you want to call it. And they kill off a lot. And at first, I was like, you know, I don't remember these characters. I barely saw them. When I saw them, whatever. However, the characters were affected by it. I knew, like, the way they had the rest of things go is they use those fallen characters as sources of inspiration. They said, I got to do it for them, or they would have done this, or they used them said, oh, he would have done this. I just remember we got to do that because he's not here to do that anymore. It was waitful for the characters in the story, and that was so refreshing that even if I didn't care about them, the people I were watching maybe did care about, they were impacted. Which I think is often like just played up and played out, because we were talking about, again, referring way back for you guys, but last week for us, in our Jujutsu Kaisen, when main boy guy dies and it comes back to life, it was just like a bloop, just a little blip in the timeline. Like the connection between characters was just not even a reaction. Then Gurren Lagann, it's impactful. In fact, Simone, he has 3 episodes of mourning to recover from realizing that Kamina's dead. His bro is gone.
Yeah.
And that was refreshing. You know, the things that they actually did consistently. The one thing I might propose they did consistently in this anime was they handled death all right.
Yeah, I think that was pretty good as well. What else, Skylar? What else was on your list?
Well, it's a very, and I said this in my one sentence about it being a generic mecha, because a lot of the mecha tropes or plot points, they hit, unsurprisingly. So kind of like I mentioned, death, that's very, very common in mecha, where they kill off characters, they're not afraid to kill them off, and a lot of times they're even main characters. That's very common in mecha, or at least the ones that I've seen. Having someone who switches side either one or multiple times, that happened with Spiral, where he was on the other side, but then he joined their side. Like, there's always people swapping sides on mecha animes. It's a mecha thing. You know, the whole princess power thing, where it's like, oh, there's this random girl that we found with no context, but she holds like these special powers in regards to the mecha, and she becomes a major plot device down the road. That's a very generic mecha thing.
Okay. I've seen only a couple of mechas.
The ending
myself.
being tragic is a very typical mecha thing. Which is why mechas typically don't score very high for me, is because I'm just not a fan of most tragedies.
The common tragedy. It's really interesting, because actually a minute ago listened to a podcast called Friends at the Table. They do role-playing kind of stuff. And they brought forward a notion that I thought was very interesting, but by your definition here, Skylar, it might have been just more of a natural evolution. They did a mech noir roleplay. Doing a lot of dark themes and investigation. And because I thought like mech interactions I've had is like this show and what was it, Code Geass? That's pretty. I like Power Rangers, if you want to count that. That's basically it. And honestly, if we're really being honest, there's a lot of combat here that reminds me of Power Rangers.
Yeah.
Punch! Oh no! I punch you! I have a stronger punch! Great! I'm now stronger because I did the thing, and now punch!
Or also literally like, oh, our power separated isn't enough, we must combine!
Yeah, we must combine! I know we're more powerful! Great! Yeah, man, the combat, what a stick of letdown. The reason I want to watch mecha stuff, or like I would be interested in more mecha, because I've obviously not seen a lot, is because mech fighting is different than human fighting, or like human superpower fighting.
Yep.
Not in this anime. It's not at all. Like I remember the one scene they did it for me was one of the Beastmen, which is the antagonist of like the first half of the show, grabs the Gurren Lagann mech, which is Simone and Kazuma and Bro. Not Kazuma. That's a different anime. What's sticking to who am I? I'm Bro. Simone and Bro's mech, Gurren Lagann. He grabs their legs. The Beastman grabs their legs and starts pulling on them like this. And the character's like, oh, my legs, oh, the pain, oh, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, shut up, bend over and kill him. Like, just do your thing. You're a mech. You can't feel any of that. You're upside down. But, like, be a pilot in a mech. Don't be a mech. If you're a mech, just be a mech. Or if you're in pain, then just be a flesh character. Be a giant or something. Do be a superhero. I want things rotating on ball bearings. I want, like, piercing shots, debilitating arms, and they use that arm for a weapon or something. Like, mechs are mechanic for a reason. It's so you don't have to get hurt. And but this, it's fine. The combat was not, it disappointed me. I want better mech stuff. I don't know where to find it, but this was not it for me.
There will be a couple in the recommendations that I've seen.
Please, please do.
Because, yeah, the thing that really sets Gurren Lagann apart is, oh, surprise, how over the top they go with their jokes, with how they fight, and just how ridiculous things are. Because pretty much every time I laughed in this show is because I couldn't roll my eyes hard enough.
Yeah,
so I had to laugh.
Exactly.
Because it's just like,
yeah.
oh.
And you know what? I won't fault them for it. If they every now and again they land a good joke, I'll take it. I'll take it every single time.
But, and that's where it's like, I can appreciate the humor and what they were trying to do. It just isn't quite my flavor of humor. And there were just so many innuendos, especially with the mechs, kind of like you were mentioning.
There was that one mech.
Yeah, the
Navy general.
Yeah, whatever the beast lady was. She had
What is her name?
You listeners, the second mech, the mech thing she inhabited, she fought with, had its face on the torso, with the eyes being the breasts, and literally the character's vagina being the mouth. And I'm like, that is horrid. No, I don't want to see this. 3 times speed that, please. I don't want to just get it over with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gross. Come on, anime. You can be. I mean, at the same time, that's part of their overtop design. I can just not like it. It could be like artistic choice to like have me not like it. I respect that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of like, besides the mechs, like the swimsuit episodes and a lot of sexualization of the characters, just of the female characters. I mean, honestly, Kazuma. He's pretty good. But the Kamina, thank you. Kazuma, is that thinking ReZero I'm doing? Or is that Konosuba?
Kazuma is Konosuba.
Konosuba, yeah, whatever. I don't even know why that's what I'm doing. Just the names are too close.
The names are pretty close, but yeah, the characters are not.
There's a lot of sexualization, and to the point that, like we've said before, not in taste.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I mentioned earlier. Like, I don't mind some of it, like if it's just, every once in a while, comedic relief, it's not a huge deal. But when it's just constant and like 90% of a character's purpose is for that purpose, it's just kind of like kind of lame.
Yeah.
Yep.
Even in another really highly rated mecha, quote unquote, anime. And that's the thing. Anytime someone says mecha anime, I just want to throw this out there. Your expectations for a mecha anime is 80% screen time mech, 20% screen time like story and politics, and it's always the other way around. Always. Yeah. All mecha anime is 20% in the mechs and 80% all the other stuff.
Yep.
So but the one I'm talking about is Code Geass. Even in Code Geass, the main female character, like, she definitely had more to her than Yoko did. But even then, a lot of the shots and everything was just was just intended fan service, which is again, it's
like,
fine.
It's like hentai really just wants to hold on to its hentai roots and just like not let that go for any reason. I'm like, or you could just do what other anime have done, like other more modern anime, and we honestly respect women, like Rascal Kids and Runicle Senpai.
Yeah.
Like, they did do sexualization, they did apply nudity scenes, and they did it in a way that was interesting and artistic and expressive and not as, I mean, it's probably still wise. It probably still was. I mean, it was still objectifying. Yet, I mean, I don't know how to get this. It was objectifying, and also it wasn't egregious.
Yeah.
It was a bit more
That's the best I got right now. Sorry for my words. It's hard because we're a bunch of white dudes talking about this, but like, if we don't like it, that's literally who they're trying to go for, I think.
Yeah.
So
let's put it this way: we didn't like it, and my wife hated it.
yes.
So if three white dudes, two of which are single, don't like the amount of fan service, that says something about the level of fan service.
And straight, I would add.
I am not.
Well, I am straight. I am straight.
You are straight. Okay.
I am straight. And I do, like I said, well, kind of like he mentioned, where it's like, yeah, I would be lying if I said that I didn't appreciate fan service that came up from time to time. I'd be lying if I said I didn't. But
so my muscly display here is not to your liking, there, Scarlett.
no,
this isn't your bit.
No. But
all right,
when it gets to a certain point, it's just annoying.
Yep, that's good. That's the point. That is, I mean, there's some that might brush that, but sticking vampire dies in no time, it's just gross. They just go too far.
I started reading the manga on that one. I dropped it so fast. If I had to give it an anime rating based off the manga, I'd probably give it a 2 or maybe a 1.5.
It landed as a 2 for me. We're probably not going to review that show. I don't recommend it by any means, but it just fell very flat.
I don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Moving on though. Any other topics you guys want to hit on enjoyment wise? Rapid fire, didn't like.
Pretty much the only thing that it had going for it that really would cause me to recommend it to anybody is just how ridiculous it is. Where it's like, hey, if you like being ridiculous over the top, there you go. You want anything else? There's better things.
Yeah, I think all the rest I have is in the technical scoring area, so I'm ready for that.
I guess my rapid fire things would be, I wasn't a fan of the ending. I get that it was supposed to be semi-tragic.
Yep.
It doesn't land with me. Lord Genome. That's his name, Lord Genome.
Yeah.
I think his character was just really underdone, and most of the antagonists in this show, like V-Roll was kind of interesting. Knew he was going to switch sides from basically after he didn't get blown up the first time. I was like, okay, maybe he comes back. And then the second time he got away, I was like, okay, well, he's gonna join them later. That's the only thing that's gonna make sense. And then Liron was just an annoying character for me 80% of the time, not because of any particular reason. I just felt like his character was just annoying. And again, objectification of a sexuality in a weird way. I just didn't really vibe with it.
Quick note on that.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm looking up something.
That's actually another mecha trope, which is that the mechanic is usually gay, but if not,
interesting.
There's always a gay character in mecha, and they're either the mechanic, one of the I don't know what you want to call it, where they coordinate everybody. They're calling the shots. That's another standard mecha trope. Anyways.
Yeah, and I'm not against that in any way.
No.
I'm totally for it. It's just, don't do it in a way that makes that kind of character intentionally look annoying, even though they're really smart. That's not really respectful. And
True. We're doing this show a major disservice because one of the biggest part of this anime we haven't even talked about, but not only me, but the stinking internet can't give me his character name. Where is this character?
Who?
The religious guy.
They're what?
The religious guy from episode 3 or whatever. What's his name?
Rocio.
Yeah. You haven't talked about him at all.
I was actually going to bring that up for the rapid fire things I liked. I think Rocio's character development was super interesting.
Yeah.
And the episode where he like goes back to his homeworld to try and kill himself was, I think, really good.
Yeah, introduce him real quick
really
for us,
powerful.
Brett. Tell us a little bit about this character.
Okay, so Rocio came from this underground town where, in order for them to survive with the limited resources they have, the leader of the town came up with this bogus religion where they basically capped their population, and if they had children that were born more than their population cap, they basically just killed them by sending them out into the desert. And they called it like a religious ascendance, basically. So Rocio comes from this place, and then he eventually joins our main group of people, and then over time becomes obsessed with doing whatever it's going to take to preserve the human race, even if that means sacrificing people like he did back in his hometown. And so because of that, he eventually has this mental breakdown, because he even but he goes against the person who saved him. He goes against Simone, he goes against Kamina, he goes against everybody, takes over command of the whole futuristic city, and then can't live with the weight of the decisions he's made, which some of the decisions include like leaving half of the humans behind so that this human race can proliferate and survive a catastrophic event, and he can't live with it. So he goes back to his home planet, talks with his little religious leader guy, and then gets saved by Simone.
I'm just surprised we haven't brought him up there, because he was literally all the drama in the second half of this season. He encapsulated every like major talking point or struggle that wasn't the anti-spiral just like weapon threat that the characters faced in this as soon as the time skip happened, when they need to and actually now let's think about it, there was a limit on humans in his village. There was a there's a limit on humans in the second half. As soon as humanity reached 1 million people on the surface, that's when all Moon was going to break loose on them.
The ironic thing about that, though, is the on the surface bit.
Yeah.
And he was actively pulling people out of the underground villages.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then they learned that it wasn't going to matter, and even the underground village people weren't going to survive. And that's when he had to make the decision of, sacrifice half of everyone. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
well, it sounds like we're wrapping up our enjoyment section, unless anyone has any last notes to add.
No, I liked Rocio. I guess in my enjoyment, I was really happy with Nia, the princess. I liked her character design, like specifically her hair having the blue shading on the end on a white bleach blonde, like long locks, had this crazy cool like cloud feeling to her at all times. And that was, I'm not talking about that in technical too, but that was a good design character for me. I really like that.
This will come up in technical, but I'll address it real quick. Their whole spiral power concept.
Yeah.
It was a good idea. It's just that, I don't know, for me, and this came up even in our Jujutsu Kaisen, where there is an example of essentially this concept done really well, and Gurren Lagann didn't really fully go into it, because I guess for me, there wasn't a true anti-logic for it. There wasn't something to really put the spiral logic against. It was just, hey, I'm more awesome than you are because I'm human, and so, raw.
I mean, the anti-spiral race was the antithesis to the spiral power.
But the anti-spiral race were spiral power the entire time.
Yeah, they just
froze
their
fight
evolution.
spiral, but it was the birth of anti-spiral was from spiral power.
True.
They just decided, this could potentially destroy the universe, so we better stop it.
Right.
So it's this argument I have that is there really even anti-spiral power, or they just named it that because they wanted to be the rebellious notion of fighting the evolution of the universe, the spiral evolution of the universe.
Instead
Yeah,
of being
okay,
a
that's true.
right-handed spiral, it's a left-handed spiral.
That's great. So that's a good point, Skylar. That's a good point. I like that.
Okay. Well, let's jump into the technical then. So the way technical works is we try to give the show a 1 to 10 ranking on its technical accomplishment, trying to be objective as possible, putting our enjoyment pieces aside as much as we can, but we're human. So there's 4 categories: art, story, characters, and delivery. We rank each one on a scale of 1 to 5, add it all up, divided by 2. 1 is terrible for all categories. 5 is exceptional. 3 is meh for all categories, on par with what you would expect from a decent show. It doesn't stand out for being exceptionally good or bad. And we always start with art, which includes music, animation, sound design, art style, intro and outro. And I'm going to start by commenting on the music. There were a lot of good music moments. There were a lot of good music moments. There were also a lot of weird, over the top, wacky music moments that really, like, if you look at it from a perspective of, like, so in music theory, you have certain tone and mood and intonation and different tools that can contribute to a certain emotion that you're trying to convey. And there were a lot of times where the emotion that the scene was trying to convey and the music that was playing were dissonant. Like, they almost cacophonic in a way. Like, they just did not really they did not mesh well. And so, like, to me, the music part is kind of a wash, really.
You know, you're gonna say that here. I'm gonna say that just about everywhere in this anime. Is stink, man. There was no consistency in this show in any point of anything. Like, I'm trying to because they did reach like some kind of fulfilled vision on that, and you can see that they like get to something, but like, the animation was really cool at some moments, and other points, it's just the most basic frame skipping things you've ever seen. At some moments, the music was like on point, and on sometimes it was underwhelming or confusing, like the rock opera or whatever that scene was at the end, where they literally had the fat lady singing for like a whole 5 minutes of the episode.
Right.
And on and on and on. Like, I'm going to talk about this many times. There are characters, there's going to be every point of this. I see this as very polarizing anime because technically it was not consistent at all across the whole front.
So that wraps up our technical section. 3's all the way down. Thanks for joining us for this episode.
No. I wouldn't put the exceptional I like the high moments as a 5. I would best put them at a 4.
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
But if they're 4 and then the low moments are a 2, then we're still at a 3.
No, the low moments are not a 2.
There are some terrible
so let's talk about it.
times.
Let's talk about it because we might pull some nuance out of here, but there's a lot in this show. Believe it or not,
Yeah.
this 100% critically rated anime. So,
Oh, boy.
let's talk about Skylar. You have any comments on the animation of this show?
There were many times where it was just bad. Like, just straight up bad.
Define bad. Give us bad. What does bad mean here?
You have a background, you have a foreground element, you have another midground element, is what we'll call it, that you draw on a sheet, and then you literally just take the sheet and move it across without doing anything else. But at a time where it should be growing or doing something, just not straight moving.
Okay. Yep.
I'll add on what Skylar just said, which is that I always think a show made in a certain time era deserves to be considered, like when it was made. I think the timing is important. I also think that the art style that they chose to go with is also important. So, like, what I'll say is that the art style they chose for this show, I think, was the reason for some of those decisions to be made. However, I'm looking up one thing.
Yeah.
Here's some other anime that came out in 2007. Naruto Shippuden, Mobile Suit Gundam 00,
Okay.
Death Note.
Oh, okay. Actually,
Mhm.
that goes into that's a little bit on the I think at the better animation side, as far as I remember it. Like when they needed
Toward
the
the
animation.
Terra, Clanad. So like there's a lot of shows that came out at this time that I'm not saying Gurren Lagann has to live up to those
Yeah.
because they chose a specific art style. But to Skylar's point, I do think there were many moments that for budgetary reasons or time reasons or whatever were just rushed. Like some of the fight scenes, like Braydn, you mentioned earlier, were literally just a static image and then streaking across the screen colors.
Yep.
And that was it. And and some fight scenes, that was all it was. And I was like, that's kind of lame. Then there were other really good fight scenes, but I do think the animation probably going to get heat for it. I think it was actually a weaker part of the show.
And I'm trying to think of good animation like moments or scenes that stood out, and I can't quite. I remember noting some like, oh, they did that well, but like nothing that's like really landed. Honestly,
The
Communist final fight scene was awesome.
okay,
Yeah, the some of the few times that there was good animation is essentially when you have the character just standing there and then their hair is blowing in the wind, and that was well done. But that's kind of a interesting thing to put a lot of attention into because yeah, and this is where it is kind of interesting because they do have moments that are good. I would give it a 3.5 to a 4 range. I don't remember.
moments.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
remember seeing any 5 level animation where it's just jaw dropping, just like, whoa, that was cool, that was good.
and I'm thinking about this because like I just finished watching One Punch Man again. Crew, my jaw was on the floor, like literally just doing an animation pass of One Punch Man. They had just the most innocuous moments to be so beautifully well done.
Oh yeah,
And I remember those now. And Gurren Lagann, I don't have those. So where are we feeling at with our art range? I don't think I have anything for sound design specifically. I think the opening song was pretty sweet. I don't remember the closing song at all.
I always
So-
skip the song, so I don't have
A
any.
lot
comment.
of the, I think a lot of the sound design was actually pretty decent, but I wouldn't say that it was great or bad. I
Yeah.
think it was just a meh.
Yeah.
It was just what you'd expect from a decent show.
So I don't think we're falling. I don't think we're falling towards a 1. I think it's like a 2.25 is my scope.
Yeah,
I'd be more. I think it deserves at least a 2.5. If we look at like a 2, it was sometimes bland, poorly done, and/or repetitive, which is true.
Yes.
4, the composition often delivers moments in an excellent fashion. Not quite true, but it's kind of more
Correct.
meh. So like, yeah, 2.5. I think 2.5 would be great.
I'm trying to think if I want to pull towards that too, because our 2 line is honestly pretty on par. It's sometimes bland, poorly done, and or repetitive.
sometimes poorly done.
But is
Yeah,
it more
that's true.
towards par of that, or is it solidly on that square?
Here's
guess
why
like-
I would. I think that they're like, I can actually think of Braydn a lot of moments animation wise that actually were really good. So for example, when Viral and Simone are going and attacking the anti-spiral, and they're in like their 7 Russian nesting doll form, and then every time it gets stabbed, like the next one like comes out, and then the next one, and like that was actually a really well animated scene. And then he takes off the head and chucks it at the anti-spiral.
Okay.
Communist final fight scene, the fight scene where they combine to fight against Viral for the first time, when Viral uses his nuclear laser attack. Like, there are a lot of moments that stand out to me as being animated really well.
Or a good art style, if not animation. But
yeah. Or a really like committed art style they executed on well.
Sure.
So I think there's enough moments that were good that it nudges it to a 2.5. But I do think that for the most part, I would say that sometimes it was poorly done, bland, or repetitive. Like if you just go Google best scenes in Gurren Lagann, it's so funny. You'll see in some of the best scenes, you'll see moments where it's just a static picture with white lines. So like,
Great.
yeah, like I think I would edge it to a 2.5.
I'm going to say 2.5, but I'm going to add to what you said. It says, I wouldn't say it was sometimes bland, poorly done, repetitive. I would say it was so inconsistent that that inconsistency drives it below and up on par anime.
Yeah.
So it's not just polarizing, it's polarizing and inconsistent. It's going to draw itself down. I would say 2.5.
Sure. Yep. I agree.
Skylar?
Are we at 2.5?
Yeah, 2.5. That's about the range that I would give it for art.
Okay. 2.5.
Okay. All right, on to story. Story includes plot devices, tone/mood, continuity, world building, pacing, rules and systems, and tropes. 1, terrible. It was frequently nonsensical, inconsistent, boring, confusing, ambiguous, unoriginal, and disappointing. 5, exceptional. It was always consistent, well-paced, comprehensible, consummate, on point, and unique.
This is where it gets interesting. Because you cannot dock them for being unoriginal. Really.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
Because the way that they go over the top is what makes it so unique and interesting.
Agreed.
But at the same time, their originality is so nonsensical that they're kind of fighting each other in this area.
I like how you said that.
Yeah. I don't know how to voice it, but I have a counter to that as well, because especially near the end, they start introducing blow by blow, like some weird anti-spiral text, just some real strange stuff.
Yep.
And then our dear what's his butt? Stinking Leron, the tech guy, he's like, okay, so this thing, I'm going to scientifically break down this thing with a bunch of words. Let's go. I am on top of what's going on here. Let's go. And he like gives some kind of explanation for why or what this thing is and how to fight it. And I liked that effort they put into this ridiculous thing they were trying to justify. And I think that helped rein it into like a consistency in their world building, which was one of their stronger marks in how they did things. They definitely had a vision of this spiral power and what that meant in the world. Now, on that world building and continuity, it took 7 years to go from cavemen in the ruins to the land of the future utopia, and maybe a million could have been done. 1 million human people could have been, but not a million adults by any stretch of imagination. They would all been 7-year-olds. That had been like, actually, now think about it, been like 900,000 7-year-olds and 100,000 adults to make that world possible. And they literally went from living and like drilling with like a hand crank drill to like flying cars, spaceships, and beyond space travel. Like
They explained it was the spiral power, man.
it was a spiral power. Yeah, no, that's literally what they say. They give a one line that says, "You see the what spiral power can become. Look what you guys did in 7 years." I'm like, I still have no idea how they did that, and that was the spiral power.
That brings up one other point for story that I think deserves to be mentioned, especially for plot.
Yeah.
Which is that the level of convenience in this show is astronomical, and and I'm fine with some convenience. Like you need to have the, from the clutches of defeat, the hero pulls out this thing. But some of the times when the answer they had, and we talked about this earlier, when the answer they had to a problem was, that little that little mammal that's been crawling around Yoko's boobs this whole time?
Uh-huh.
Let's just say that it absorbed enough spiral power to save everybody. Oh, wow, it fixed the machine? Sweet. And then at another critical moment, it's going to turn into a human? What? Like, yeah, I just...
Brett, the one they used most systematically, it was simply, Simone, don't believe in yourself. Believe in me. Believe in the commoner who believes in you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Send it to infinity. Let's go.
And I don't dock it. I don't think that that's as bad because it was the point of the show. The point of the show was if you believe in something enough, you can make it happen. And I think that's overall a good message.
Sure.
That they communicated. But yeah, the other convenience factors just were
Brett, I'm not going to argue with you that was the essential of the show or that it was like how they wanted to justify the thing, or that even that's like typical, like that we're saying the characters need to have overwhelming confidence to win these unreachable things. That all I'm fine with, but the fact that was the only note they used for so many fights made this a less interesting mecha anime than it could have been. Like any amount of innovation, any amount of like interesting combat, any amount of interesting ways to overcome that's not just that one line note every episode could have made this a better show.
I agree.
And that is something, again, that I think that Gurren Lagann actually underperforms on in comparison to other mecha. Because there are some other mecha where there's some fighting spirit, as it was called in Gurren Lagann, where it's like, oh yeah, this person shows like an incredible affinity for this mecha, so they just happen to be able to pilot it better than anybody else. There is always a bit of that in mecha, but then again, you could also say that about pretty much every fantasy story.
Yeah,
there are
King Arthur's sword in the stone. King Arthur's sword in the stone.
I was actually going to toss a good example of that, which was My Hero Academia.
Yeah.
When your main character uses his power for the first time, it's at max power and destroys his body.
Yeah.
Well,
he didn't just come to that. That's how it happened.
But that's just it. Where it's like the number of stories that can take that concept and then execute on it well are far less. My Hero being one. Full Metal Alchemist is a really good example of how they take a system and they stay in that system.
Yeah.
But
true. Do we have Full Metal Alchemist on our list? We have to do Full Metal Alchemist, right?
We will do Full Metal Alchemist.
Please, Brett. Please,
we will do
bro.
it. Definitely.
Bro.
I want to do it.
We gotta do it, bro. Come on, Full Metal Alchemist.
Okay. Anyway. So continuing on just that real quick.
Yeah.
And so the thing that really bothered me about this is the Deus Ex Machina of it isn't intelligence, it isn't clever thinking that gets people out of these situations, which is often what's so satisfying about the hero resolving the situations. They're like, oh, they totally outsmarted the villain because they did this thing. Or they did a really clever twist on that, or whatever. With this one, it was like, no, it's whatever idiot has the higher self-esteem that wins.
If you're not winning, you're not drilling hard enough.
Yeah, you gotta drill harder.
Yeah. So let me try and like recap our thoughts here. So we're thinking that plot and plot devices were kind of meh. Tone/mood we didn't talk about, but I think that was actually a really good point to the show.
They did well.
It had a mood it wanted to convey, and it did it consistently well.
Yeah,
that's true.
Continuity, it was consistent a lot of the time. It was also inconsistent sometimes.
It was consistently ridiculous and inconsistent.
Yes, correct.
World building, it built the world up fairly well, even though some of the higher power things weren't really elaborated on as much as they could have been. Pacing was meh.
Pacing, I want to talk about pacing for a second, actually.
Go ahead.
Because, again and again, I'm going to say this episodes 2 through 6 or whatever it is, just almost not needed. Like, almost it's a zero importance to this show and it's large. What they introduce, you need to have that. That's why they had the recap episode. But there's just kind of a wash of whatever they talk about in those episodes.
The only thing that matters is Kamina in those episodes.
And Yoko.
And Yoko's boobs.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Well, you also get introduced to Nia, and that is an important introduction.
Does she get introduced before the fight? I thought she got introduced after the fight.
No, after Kamina dies, because she's kind of what breaks Simone out of grief.
Yeah, that's like...
But that's not episode 2
after.
through 6, though. That's episode
That's later.
9 or 10 or whatever. That's after Kamina dies. Because Kamina dies in episode 7, 8, or 9. One of those 3.
Oh, I thought he died a little sooner for some reason.
Nope.
No.
I'm 100% saying that those episodes are just introducing characters and not doing anything interesting besides. Like, there is a dead zone in this anime that is those episodes.
Yeah.
And then after that,
I agree.
they do hit at a more earner's pace, I would say. It does sit a little slow where I like it, but after that recap episode, it seems to have progression of what they're trying to tell from then on out.
Yeah, okay, I agree.
So pacing has a huge hole in it. It has a huge dock that is those episodes. Yet afterwards, they seem to fall into a rhythm that is more fuckable.
I agree. Okay, so based on that, are we saying it's another 2.5 or a 3?
Just reading a 2 for us again, saying a 2 is bad. It was sometimes nonsensical, inconsistent, boring, confusing, ambiguous, unoriginal, and disappointing.
Ambiguous would be a big one.
But unoriginal is not.
Unoriginal is not. Correct.
I think this one is truly landing in the middle, where some things were good and some things were bad. I think this one deserves a 3.
I, however, want to toss in that pacing hole. Like, there's just a lot of wasted screen time that could have been condensed to a couple episodes, or use that space to develop more interesting things, combat-wise, world-wise, that they just fell short on. There's a whole, 5 out of 27 episodes? It's a fifth of the anime. That's just a hole.
I would also want to nudge it down because, again, one of the things that this one kind of seems to nail and just hammer home is being nonsensical.
And not in a good way. It wasn't always fun.
Not
it was
not always in a good way.
Head scratching, or it was convenient, or it was... I think this is a 3 falling down to a 2.5. Because I want to talk about, we use that language a lot here, whereas art was probably rising up from a 2.5, or maybe landed squarely there. This is definitely falling down from a more... this polarizing, I think, leans higher than it did in the art section, but not enough to be on average.
Yeah.
So 2.5?
2.5 for me. Yep.
Okay. All right. 2.5. That takes us to characters. Characters includes character design, development, motivation, action/inaction, relationships, and personality. 1 terrible. The characters are frequently unreasonable, confusing, inconsistent, unreasonably static, dynamic, and annoying. 5. The characters are always understandable, consistent, reasonable, adequately static, dynamic, and relatable. Take us away, bro.
Tira, bro.
Yeah, bro. I got a quote for you, bro. God gave us the eyes in the front of our heads so we can look forward to the future. And
I'm looking forward to the future of a lot of these characters hitting really good points in this way. Even side characters.
So.
I think specifically the areas that are really, really done well are personality for all of the characters.
Oh, 100%.
Even Yoko, her personality was defined and consistent. And the motivation of all of the characters, I think, was actually done better than a lot of mecha anime I've seen.
I would say
I think it was good.
Consistent. There's a lot of characters in this anime whose motivations seem their own and their own little thing, but we didn't get to see them be motivated. They just kind of let it peek through a little bit. Say, okay, with Simone doing his thing, I guess this aligns with me, and I'll do this thing now. But not really animated character-wise towards their own motivations.
I actually, I don't know. I want to turn attention to After Kamina Dies. There's a solid 3 or 4 episodes where everyone is rediscovering their own personal motivation and why they're doing what they're doing. And so even the side characters had a chance to be really dynamic during that time. And when Simone was finally chosen to be the leader, like that was a big development area for all of the characters, even the side characters. So like I'm tossing out there that that actually the characters were treated really well and contributed a lot to the positive side of the show, especially in the second arc, with the takeover arc with Rocio. Like, and a lot of the characters showing like they didn't like what he was doing. Some of them being like, "Hey, we just gotta go along with it." Or even Littner, the guy who had the kid and he went away and then he ended up like sacrificing. Like, I actually am proposing that that's pretty strong.
I want to touch on that because I'm not going to disagree with you there. Especially since I already noted that I really appreciate how they treated death. That was a great point you brought up there with the whole death resolution. What I'm saying is, like the motivations they had were understandable. The motivations they worked on were good for the scenarios they were applied to. Were they motivating to me? Did they like really start pulling me forward? Was that a 5 for me? Not even close. I'm saying these guys, they were consistent. They were realized characters that just didn't say a lot. They were done better than I think most anime does characters. However, I don't think they went anywhere that realized the more like character out of them. They just realized characters we expected out of them. A lot of characters here very well filled a role that we expect with them from the other anime that we've seen. Whether it be female characters, whether it be the tech character, whether it be the guy character in the second half, I can't remember his name. Whether they are Rossiu or whether they are our main hero Simone. Like Simone and Kazuma, they amped up a little bit more than average, but the rest of them they didn't bring anything I didn't expect. They just did what I expected and did it well. So I'm not thinking it as a negative. I'm just saying it was a plus, just not extreme.
Yeah. What are you thinking, Sky?
I think that there are 2 things that this anime executed on really well, and is why people watch it. The first one, kind of like we mentioned earlier, is essentially the over-the-top nonsense / fan service that's included in that nonsense. But the second reason is the characters. Because just think back to earlier in our podcast, how much have we been talking about in enjoyment the things that we have liked about characters, or characters doing this, or the way that characters reacted to certain events. We have not talked about this anime in a positive light in regards to the story. We have not talked about it in a positive light in regards to the art. It's because it is the characters that are the central core, essentially, of this anime. And so, it's like, there are plenty of static background characters, but they are still made interesting enough, and they are still given a unique niche of themselves that I would say that the characters are actually really well done.
Yeah,
with only a few exceptions.
Braydn, to your point, if a show can make me feel for a side character dying, like Kiton or Jorgen and Bakusa, it did a really good job, I think.
I mean, like I said earlier, that moment where those characters passed, I didn't feel anything for them at all because I had no connection with them. But the characters did realize, like every character after that used those relationships they had with those characters in a way that I loved. Yeah. So I do also love that moment, that part of the anime.
I think that's a gold star for the relationships part of this category. The relationships between the characters, I think, was done super well. I'm just going to throw out a proposal of 4.5 for characters.
Easy.
What do you guys think?
4.5 easy for me, yeah. Because even in terms of relationships, number one, there were relationships. And number two, they were good.
Oh, this one's hard for me because what I see here is what I want to be a 3. This is where I want my baseline to be.
Sure.
Wow.
But I do acknowledge that for the shows I watch, this is that is not the baseline by any means. So I'm not trying to adjust it. I'm just saying I'm having a hard time really landing where we're at here, because this for character wise, they did a couple things that stepped up. They did Kamina, they did Simone very well. They also did a couple design points very well, which are, like I said, was it Nia, the princess girl?
Yep.
And also I loved the final mech design for the Gurren Lagann.
Yeah.
The final ultimate Cosmo Crusher form. That thing was huge and intricate and crazy. It was so sweet. Now,
Rocio.
Yeah. I'll give Rocio too. I do want to give a quick note on that. I hate that they just blackwashed the stinking Gurren Lagann ultimate form for the big boss. I get it, whatever. I hate it. They could have done better. Yeah. Anyway, but what I'm saying is I'm leaning more towards a 4 myself, like a pretty solid 4. Like, I want to acknowledge that this is good. As we say here, the characters are understandable, consistent, reasonable, adequately set, dynamic, and relatable. Yeah, they hit that tempo. That's the tempo I like seeing them at. Very, very notable. Sometimes they were reaching beyond what I would expect, what I want characters to be. So I would say this is a 4 reaching up to a 4.5 and doesn't land. A solid 4, earnestly. These guys, they don't deserve anything less, for sure, in my opinion.
Okay. I think that if we look at the entire cast, which includes the antagonists, if we include the Anti-Spiral, if we include Lord Genome, I actually think they were weaker parts of the show. Lord Genome's reasoning kind of made sense, but I think his character was just really underserved and didn't really live up to it. And then when he turns into a brain computer on the ship, just was really, and then he just all of a sudden turns back into a human. Some of the character stuff, especially with the antagonists, I don't think were handled super well. So I would be willing to go down to a 4, but I feel like it's falling from a 4.5.
Sure. I would put those two characters you listed as more on par. Like they were a serviceable thing that I would expect to fill a role in the show they did.
Yeah. Skylar?
Yeah, kind of like I mentioned before, the reason you essentially watch this anime is because of the characters.
Yeah.
And yeah, the antagonists do suffer from being a little bit more poorly developed, because essentially what it boils down to is that I would say that their motivation is kind of weak. And so it just doesn't give them that extra power behind them. And so, yeah.
You know, I'm gonna add in, Skylar. Actually, I'm thinking more deeper about it. I'm thinking about the 3 captains of Lord Genome. So you had the Guame, the turtle guy. You had the ocean lady, and you have Viral. I think they were all kind of weak as well.
Viral was
Yoko?
not the general.
Oh. No, he wasn't. It was
It was the first battleship that they took over that Viral was serving.
Cytomander? Man, some of these names I've forgotten.
Anyway, but my point is, I put them on the mess side. Yoko, I think Yoko alone is a big disappointment. Liron, we talked about. I'm starting to get on board more with a 4, looking at the entire cast rather than just the cast that really stood out to me as really good. So I guess what I'm saying is I'd be happy to land at a 4, given thinking about the cast holistically.
Scrolling through the cast list, I would actually start to agree.
Okay. All right. Let's lock it in at a 4.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we are on to delivery. Delivery includes translation, voice acting for the sub and the dub, the script, and the edit. 1, terrible. The delivery is frequently cheesy, inappropriate, incoherent, and bland. 5, exceptional. The delivery is always believable, genuine, understandable, elevating, and enriching. Takes it up to the next level. I did watch the show subbed and dubbed,
Yeah, same.
and the dub was actually good.
No.
It was not terrible. It wasn't great. It wasn't Steins Gate, but it wasn't bad. It
Yeah.
was okay.
That's how I watched it, honestly, is I had it in English while I was at work and just let it play through. And I was able to keep up with everything and didn't feel like I missed any emotional beats. And they weren't screaming at me or being weird. It was good. It was fine.
Just so everyone knows, for reference for this podcast, I prefer Japanese almost exclusively. The reason I watch dub is so that during the podcast we can talk about whether or not it was good or bad. So when I say I've watched both, I mean like I watched half of the show in Japanese and half in English so I can talk about it on the show. I do not like dubs. I actually hate them. I like subs, but I listen to it for the sake of conversation. So anyway, it was okay. It wasn't terrible.
I want to say the first half is when I mostly watched it in the subbed version, the Japanese voice acting. And the I want to note like the lines I most remember. What I'm trying to say is those were Kazuma's lines.
Yeah.
Like the things that I really took core from Kazuma were all done. Kamina, thank you. Bugger. Kazuma, get out of here. I don't even like you. Jeez, man. Kamina, the big bro. His lines were delivered to me in the translation, and I loved it. Like, I want to say the translation did him service. Like, and they landed an inspirational character out of Kamina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas the English voice, like I said, I don't think I missed a beat there. So
Yeah. I think the translation of the subtitles was not the best. I think it was slightly subpar.
Oh.
Mostly because of the age. But it wasn't bad. It was just more of like, okay, yeah, that's what I'd expect. But there were a couple weird moments, but it wasn't bad.
Because I want to give a shout out that you remember how I was talking about near the end, our dear tech master is trying to like scientifically justify everything that's going on in the crazy upward spiral that's the last couple episodes. Those landed in the subtitles I was watching.
Yeah, no, like I say, most of the time they were good. There were just a couple little weird moments.
What I'm saying is that is exceptional for getting those points across as consistent as they tried to do.
Sure. Yeah. Fair.
Like there was one funny little moment. They're like, they said like, oh, what about like a peon quark or whatever they said. I don't remember the actual term they used, but they referenced like an actual thing that I recognize. I'm like, oh, yeah, that doesn't apply here. I'm like, okay, well they're obviously just walking over that whole notion in our science. So I just want to shout out a couple times. They actually held in and translated well what they're trying to go across to an English audience.
It is pretty standard though for as soon as you need to do dimensional or even small stuff, those terms always come out and it's always the same explanation. So it's just like,
I'll throw out here that I don't think this show did anything in delivery that was good or bad. It was just kind of meh. However, some of the voice acting, specifically for Kamina, was actually, I think, pretty good. But that's the only thing I can think of that pushes this needle either direction.
I would give it a meh, with Kamina raising it to a 3.5.
That's what I was thinking too.
I don't know if Kamina alone raises it up to there, because even Kamina, I mean, it was the script, it was the character, it came across well.
So let's look at forward. The delivery is often believable, right, genuine, understandable, elevating, and enriching. I think that Kamina often enough did that. And even Simone, like I am going to say, even Simone, Simone's voice acting throughout the entirety of the show actually was quite dynamic. Like, he had some really intense moments, some really sad moments, and the emotion of it was conveyed pretty well. Not like next level, but like good. It was often like I'm pushing it up to a 3.5 as well.
Mm-hmm. No, I like that. Yeah, because I've been thinking about this a lot. One thing we haven't talked about is where Simone is like in the bushes and he sees Kamina and Yoko share a kiss, like right before this big battle, and Simone gets like immensely jealous and like runs off and all that stuff. That really, yeah, like they've landed a bunch of stuff. I have to consider here when we're considering edit specifically, the whole I keep referring to. Episodes 2 through 6.
I think that's more story pacing, though. I think edit is specifically like, how did they stitch scenes together? How did they transition from one scene to another?
Was there a sequence of events that could have been reordered to make more sense or enrich the story?
Yeah.
Which they did in episode 7. We can talk about this over and over again. To get the grasp of what you wanted in that section, they did do an edit that did that service, and that was episode 7. They did a recap episode. So I would toss like pacing. They obviously, because like the content within there is what I talk about with pacing. Inside of those episodes, how was the pacing there? Very slow, very unnecessary. The edit, if they just wanted to like cut that section up for the higher points, they did that. They just didn't do that in that section. I mean, maybe there's something to be said to like, okay, they acknowledge that this was a slow section and they put this together for the purpose of summarizing all that extra stuff. And they needed to do these episodes for some reason. So like a little bit good and a little bit on the bad there. But I just want to bring it up here because there's besides filling that space with better stuff, they could have just cut a lot out instead. So I want to propose a 3. There's stuff that kind of leaks it forward, and there's stuff that pulls it back a little bit. It's not a very polarizing thing because I think they did the show a good service. On, like I said again, a 3 is on par we expect from a decent show. It doesn't stand out for being especially good and bad. Voice acting was solid. Their cuts largely were solid. The translation brought them across. They brought Cosmo across especially well. A 3.
What do you think, Sky?
I'm thinking that, we have the pacing in the story to kind of help with those things. But one thought that I kind of had as you were talking about was, if they didn't have those episodes, really what would they have replaced those episodes with? Because one of the problems with anime, or at least current anime, is that you have X episodes. And you have to put out all of those episodes.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it does actively hurt the anime because they take something that shouldn't be stretched out and they stretch it out so that they can hit the time. And the fact that they included a filler episode partway through the series, now that I'm thinking about it, probably implies that they had too much time.
So that's not good. I'm not going to excuse them from that. There's animes that have filled that time.
Oh yeah, I'm just acknowledging and trying to identify what the problem is and what it is not.
I got you.
And so for that sense, there's not much an edit can do to fix that. It's all down to the pacing and the story itself. The story itself has to be able to accommodate those gaps. But it didn't. So what do you think? And we already gave the rating and story.
What do you think of for delivery, Sky?
So for delivery, I'm fine with a 3.5. Because for the most part, it's about what I would expect. But there are a few points that does lift it just a little bit up. Not a lot, but just a little bit.
Yeah, you know what? I'm actually going to defend that with Skylar. I was willing to fall down to a 2.5 in story, but I think I'm going to defend the 3.5 for delivery, mostly because there were memorable enough moments where I felt like the delivery elevated what they were trying to convey, and I don't think the meh parts were enough to detract from those. I
Okay.
actually think that it was slightly above average.
I've said my piece, and I don't feel bad about a 3.5, honestly. So
Cool.
I'm fine with a 3.5 at the end of this.
Okay, 3.5 it is. I'm going to go put it in the spreadsheet. This gives us a final technical score of 6.25. Bro, where does that put it?
Oh, bro, it ain't good, bro. That is tied for our second worst technically scored anime we've ever done.
Ew.
Technically worst being that time I got reincarnated as a slime. It's good garbage, that show. But it tied with Belle, of all shows, at a 6.25.
Really?
Yes. A second lowest rated anime we've ever reviewed.
On technical.
Technically. On the technical aspect. Correct. So that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I knew from the start that this one wasn't going to be high. Like I said, it's inconsistent across the board. Like, we talk about good character moments. If you go through, you can nitpick some bad character moments from those exact same characters. If you go through and find some good animation bites, you're going to find just some very underwhelming or underserving other moments. And then, like, it's just over and over and over again. To me, this anime, like, these guys had a vision. They just didn't have any, like, it feels like they didn't have the work method, the experience to deliver on this anime that they wanted to do, because it just is all over the place.
Skylar, what studio made this? What else have they made?
I think the name of the studio is Studio Trigger. And they've done stuff like Kill la Kill, BNA. Those are the two that come to mind.
So I would propose that they have experience in making crazy over-the-top anime, and that's what they did.
Yeah, that is what Studio Trigger does, and they do
I'm
really,
just saying,
really well.
it just didn't feel like it hit it. Oh, they did Girlie in the Bronx too. Oh my goodness.
Oh, okay. So that's our technical wrap. So for those listening, critics gave this a 100. We gave it a 62. Take that for what you want. You've heard the conversation. Pick the pieces you agree with. Pick the pieces you don't. Either way, we'd love to hear about it in the comments, wherever you're watching or listening. That being said, what should you all watch if you liked Gurren Lagann, or if you want something better than Gurren Lagann, in our opinion?
Skylar, please, Skylar, give me some mechas we can put our teeth into.
So another mecha that is just a pretty straightforward mecha that on the internet has done pretty well, but I didn't give it a high rating, is All No Zero.
I haven't heard of that one.
It's a so kind of like Neon Evangelion. It's essentially just a Mars invasion on Earth, and then the counteroffensive. That's like the introduction to it. But naturally, as you get into it and you understand how their mechs work and what the actual plot is, you'll have to kind of determine when you get into that. But yeah, it's mechs. There's a lot of mech fights. Again, I did not rate this one very high personally in enjoyment because I think it has a few problems. But if you like this kind of stuff, then you like this kind of stuff. Another recommendation of one that I've seen the first season of, I have learned that there are more seasons that have come out, so I'll need to go watch it, is Iron-Blooded Orphans. And this is a Gundam mecha show.
I was going to recommend that one as well. That's Mobile Suit Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans.
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
And that one, yeah, I liked the first season. That one was good. And then let's scroll through my list here to see what other
Skylar,
mechs.
can I interject while you do that? I'm going to just say one of my recommendations. If anyone is thinking Mobile Suit Gundam, you're going to have a brain explosion when you try and go look up Mobile Suit Gundam, because there is thousands of options and episodes, and it's crazy. So let me give my recommendations for Mobile Suit Gundam. I'm going to say Mobile Suit Gundam 00, Iron-Blooded Orphans, and the 2015 project Mobile Suit Gundam: The Origin. Another one you could do is Mobile Suit Gundam Unicorn. So those are my recommendations: Double O, Iron Blooded Orphans, and then Origin and the Unicorn. But I just wanted to weigh in on the Mobile Suit Gundam train.
Mm-hmm.
All
right.
Go for it.
Well, I got one. Crew, if you like watching Gurren Lagann, then I recommend that you watch Gurren Lagann, because a real man never dies when he's killed. Just go watch it again. Take the spiral through the heavens. Drive that passion that gave it 100% critical score. Just absolutely fulfill that nonsense. Go watch some more Gurren Lagann. Just do it.
That's good.
Oh, goodness. I'm going through my list. Honestly, we've talked about it in this episode. I'm going to recommend Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Ties in just that, again, if you want a solid cast of characters that are just going to hold up to the whole show, and then even step beyond, because, man, they get into some stuff with every single main character in this show, all like 20 of them. They get into some really, like, driving stuff. The combat is cool. The world's fleshed out. It is not a typical magic system.
Yeah.
So you get to have your imagination extended and your heart wrapped around these characters, and these guys drive into. Honestly, the ending of that show is just about as crazy as sticking Gurren Lagann. If you really take a step back for it, it doesn't go quite to the cosmic scale, but it starts going there. So, stink, man. Go watch Full Metal Alchemist. That's my recommendation here.
Yeah,
Not much, but
the way Full Metal Alchemist ends hits you very different than the ending of Gurren Lagann.
yeah, it does. Yeah, it does.
Like, whoa.
I've seen it 3 times, and I still get chills thinking about that show. It's so good.
Skylar, what else did you have?
Here's another one, Full Metal Panic. It is a older mecha, but its time frame is in more modern. It's like a modern mecha. Where it's like Earth, you have like what you would expect to see out of military, but we just also have mechas, essentially. It's kind of what Full Metal Panic is.
Yeah.
And then this one, it was brought up earlier. Might as well throw it out. Code Geass.
That was my recommendation as well.
Yeah, it's pretty popular.
Could I add on that? So Code Geass, I would specifically say Season 1. Season 1 of Code Geass. If you want something that's... hold on, let's just say, though. The amount of light-hearted, over-the-topness Gurren Lagann is the amount of intense, borderline depressing complexity that Code Geass is. There's not a lot of lightheartedness in Code Geass. There's very few moments. It's a very gritty show. I think Season 1 specifically was incredible, and I think Season 2 was hot, steaming garbage. That's my opinion. We'll talk about it more in a couple weeks. We have Code Geass coming up on our recommendation list. But yeah, I would recommend Code Geass. Sky.
I found another one, and this one's unique.
Okay.
Good.
So, do you like mecha? Do you like isekai?
What? Yes.
Then you should watch Knight's Magic. It is
Knight's?
literally
One
Knight's
more time.
Magic.
Okay.
Knight's Magic?
It is literally an isekai mecha.
Okay. I will put that on my list. I will watch that.
Now on
It's
my
interesting.
List.
It's interesting. Unique is what I'll phrase it as.
Okay.
Because unfortunately, it plays into many tropes, but
It don't be
it's
all,
isekai. It's isekai.
I
want to
go through this, but we gotta get ready for our next show, so I gotta also get ready for that the next week.
Okay, I'm gonna give a couple real quick, couple other recommendations. If you want a mecha that's also a romance, Eureka 7.
I've heard
It's a little bit longer.
7.
It's 50 episodes. Animation and score, top notch. I actually started this. I need to finish it, but I would Eureka 7 is pretty good. An older one, Ghost in the Shell. It's a classic.
Hey, actually, go watch Ghost in the Shell. Absolutely.
Ghost in the Shell. Go do the 1995 film. You don't necessarily need to do the entire franchise, but go watch the 1995 movie, Ghost in the Shell. And then I'm going to give a weird recommendation here.
Hold on, before you get to there, just toss for Ghost in the Shell. It's good to note that anything you pick up in Ghost in the Shell is like a new retelling of it. Because like there's like 2 different shows and 2 different movies and comics, and they all acknowledge each other, but largely just have their own retelling of it. There's going to be small differences of telling the exact same story. It's like seeing the Spider-Man for the 3rd time in a row. Because like there's 3 different Spider-Mans, there's 4 different, I think, Ghost in the Shells. They're telling the same bite, so you can jump into any of them, and you'll find fans about all 4 of them. Okay, sorry, go ahead, Brett.
No, you're good. Okay, I'm going to give a bit of I'm going to give 2 more recommendations really quick. If you want even more fan service.
Wow.
And more ridiculousness than even this show could accomplish, Kill la Kill is one. I did not like it at all.
Neither
but
did I.
If you like that kind of stuff, Kill la Kill is crazy. I was actually on a work trip in Boston, and I watched the first episode, and I was laughing so hard. I was like, "What the heck am I watching?" So I called my wife, and I was like, "Bridget, you need to watch the first episode of Kill la Kill while you're on a video so I can see your reaction to it." And we did that. And it was fun. It was hilarious. I watched about 5 or 6 episodes, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. But if you like that kind of stuff, check out that. And then I have a weird recommendation to end it off. I'm actually...
actually, got to interrupt you again. To note,
yes.
Kill la Kill was done by the same studio that did Gurren Lagann.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, my final recommendation that's a bit weird, but it kind of makes sense. I'm actually going to recommend Digimon, the original series.
Oh.
I mean,
So,
yeah.
If, like, number one, for a lot of you, it might hit a nostalgia factor. And for a lot of people who watch Gurren Lagann, since it came out in 2007, which wasn't too long ago, but it you know, a lot of people have that nostalgia factor for some of these anime from that time period. Digimon might have that for you. It has some of like the kind of fight scenes with the big monsters, so it's more in the realm of the kaiju instead of the mechs.
Some of the monsters are mechs.
Yep. Full Metal Greymon is half mech. So, but it's kind of got that childhood, lighthearted aspect. But it's actually a pretty serious show. It's kind of dark when you watch it. Like, so I would say if you haven't in a long time, go check out Digimon, the original series, 54 episodes. Give it another shot. Okay. There's our recommendations, everybody. We have everything from Kill la Kill to Digimon. I bet you didn't see that coming when you tuned in this week.
I didn't.
As a final note, check out our website, 310anime.com, 310anime.com. You've got a story of how this podcast got started. You have links to all of our socials, places you can listen. You can even listen to the podcast on the website. You can also check out our rubrics, our technical and enjoyment rubrics. Right there is images. Check it all out there. Bro, what final word do you have for us?
I just want to remind our viewers that yours is the drill that will drill the heavens. And go for it, crew. Absolute crew. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you all for watching. Really appreciate you all for being here. Next week, just as a reminder, next week we are going to be covering the one, the only.
It's coming.
Steins Gate.
Steins Gate!
You've heard us talk about Steins Gate in nearly every episode of this podcast. So do not miss next week where we talk Steins Gate.
Just be thinking. You might see the one anime that might be a 5 in delivery on technical scoring. You might hear that from us next week. To be continued. We'll talk about it then.
It's going to be super spicy. Definitely tune in next week. But until then, Johnny.
Good night.
See ya.
俺を信じろ。お前を信じる俺を信じろ。
何それ。